Awesome. Okay, it all looks good. Okay, that's good. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Father's Movies. I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Letteney.
And we are here on our third and final episode for now of Maximum Cage.
Maximum Cage!
This is where Not Your Father's Movies has briefly transformed into a podcast that is just about the films of Nick Cage. If I had my druthers, that would be what this whole podcast was about anyway. But we're here just exploring it in a little 3-episode run. If you haven't listened to our previous 2 episodes, those were Moonstruck and Con Air. And this episode is on Joe from 2013. I think that this is going to be kind of a little bit of a shock, I think.
It's very different from Moonstruck and Con Air. They are, compared to this, more similar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And I think also, even as little known as Moonstruck is, I think even that's more well-known than this movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think Moonstruck is actually pretty well-known.
We'll see if the downloads pay that out.
Yeah, well, that's true. I'm just like seeing all the people responding to it. Like, there's a lot of people who have a lot of love for Moonstruck, as they should,
as they ought to. Yes,
yeah.
And I mean, we're recording this before Con Air actually hits your ears, but I think just about everyone and their mom has heard of Con Air.
I think everyone's at least heard of it.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about a very interesting, tiny, bizarre, dark little grimy movie called Joe, and to kind of enable us in this descent into the human psyche, we have Letteney here joining us. Thanks, Letteney, for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we just got to get you on all the time. I don't know, whenever we can. But just before we dive into our episode on Joe, we like to start our episodes off with a little segment called, what have our kids or we been watching? I'll start off. The Academy Awards have just been announced as to what the nominees are, and I'm trying to catch up on the things that I missed. And something I did miss from last year was the animated film Raya and the Last Dragon. Obviously, one of the first mainstream animated films to feature a mostly Asian cast in a completely original, really cool fantasy world. I was very excited to check it out. Watched it with my whole family, and this movie's a fart. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry to say that. I really wanted to like this movie. It's not because of the Asian representation. It's not because of really anything about anyone involved in the movie. The voice cast is fantastic. The animation is truly breathtaking. I just hated the story, and I hated all the characters. I didn't like what anyone was doing at any moment at any time. And I thought it was dumb, and it made me really angry. There were numerous points in this movie where I was shouting at the screen in front of my wife and my 2 daughters, just being like, "What are you doing? Stop doing that! That's stupid!
That's the wrong thing to do."
So the idea behind the movie, since we'll never do an episode on it, the idea behind the movie is that there's this fantasy world that used to live in peace and prosperity when there were dragons. There's this evil that was unleashed upon the world. The dragons had to sacrifice themselves to stop the evil. And then in their absence, mankind has sort of torn itself apart, trying to get at the last bit of dragon magic. And this story takes place very quickly. Whenever the dragon magic is around, the dragon magic is split across these kingdoms. And then the story fast forwards again to when our main character is an adult and she is trying to unite all the dragon magic that's scattered throughout the land. It's kind of interesting. There's an armadillo bear that she rides around on.
Cool. That's
voiced by Alan Tudyk, who only makes bear noises. Continuing the trend of Alan Tudyk being in Disney movies, just making noises. And Raya's a really compelling protagonist at the beginning. And I think this movie really loses its wheels, especially once the central thesis is revealed, which is continue trusting people, especially if they have proven themselves to be betrayers. And then just keep trusting them, because it's better to trust people than be distrustful, even if they keep betraying you and making things worse. Because when they finally do sort of redeem your trust, it will be better for everyone. It's infuriating. It's an infuriating film. I think it's like a deeply problematic message to send to kids. This is a no, and it's nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, and absolutely not. absolutely not. No, this shouldn't. No, what is this doing here? No, Luca is better than this, and I don't like Luca. That's what we've been watching. It's now the second week in a row that I've watched an animated film with my family that I hated. Hopefully next week it'll be a little better. Letteney, what have you been watching?
So I watched a movie last night. It's called A Hero. Have you guys heard of this movie?
Oh,
was it
yeah.
good?
Farhadi's new movie.
It was really good. Yeah. So it's by Iranian filmmaker Asghar Farhadi, and it's set in Iran, and it's about this guy who has this huge debt. And I guess that's the way it is in Iran, that if you have a huge debt and you can't pay it, you get sent to debtor's prison. So the movie is kind of about him trying to get his life back. And I don't want to say much more about it because I don't want to give anything away. But I think the movie is really interesting in terms of its moral complexity. It's a movie about like the small decisions you make and how your decisions can have consequences, and about shades of gray. And throughout the movie, you go from like admiring this guy to pitying him to hating him to being disgusted by him. So it's just a really interesting, thought-provoking movie. So highly recommend.
That's amazing.
And it's free on Amazon. So
Well, I appreciate you bringing a sort of adult intellectualism to this. I wish that I could say I had seen A Hero. I really look forward to checking it out.
I do too. Is it nominated for best?
No, it was shut out.
Why though? I wonder.
I don't know.
I guess we haven't seen like any of them. So
He has come up before. I believe he was nominated for a Separation.
Yeah, right.
I think he's kind of one of those consistently nominated filmmakers.
Yeah.
So I wonder if just because of that, he was passed over.
Yeah.
I think this movie won the grand prize at the Cannes Film Festival.
The
Oh,
Grand
wow.
Prix.
So, the
Amazing.
Grand Prix.
That's surprising that it wasn't nominated. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, we haven't seen any of the other. I don't think like Drive My Car isn't available.
Nope.
And
Worst Person in the World.
Worst Person in the World. Yeah.
Flea, I think, is really hard to get a hold of as well, and
Yeah.
that's also nominated.
Yeah. That's nominated for best animated. Feature
Best
film as
animated,
well.
best documentary, and best international. It's gotten 3 nominations. I think it's the first time ever
Yeah,
that
it's
that
gonna
one
get
film's
something.
gotten all
It's
3.
gonna get something.
Maybe all 3.
Yeah, I look forward to watching all of those.
So that's A Hero streaming on Amazon Prime, and Raya and the Last Dragon is on Disney Plus.
Yeah. For me, we didn't watch anything this week. I mean, like the
Not
kids-
Bluey?
Well, okay. Let's be honest here. There was some Bluey. We tried to take a little turn back towards Octonauts. That failed spectacularly. We are not watching Octonauts anymore. We are.
I mean, I
watching
envy you
Bluey.
that, though. I
Yeah.
really envy you that, because I am sick to death of Octonauts.
I swung for the fences on Shaun the Sheep again. Shaun the Sheep,
Yep.
which is just
Charming,
great,
gorgeous.
charming. It's always fun. Bluey's always fun too. It's just
Shaun the Sheep, but the episodes are like a little bit longer.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so
There's no voices.
I don't know how I feel about this in myself, but Bluey does not autoplay the next episode, which I like. However,
On the one hand.
on the one hand, however, that means that they're only 10 minutes long, maybe
Yeah.
11 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it's not very long. And someone has to press OK to go to the next episode, which in theory I prefer. However, at this point, my children now know how to use the remote,
Yeah.
which I do not like. I do not like waking up and my daughter has turned on the television.
Yep.
That is not something I want to happen. So, Bluey, I have a love-hate relationship with you at this point in my life. Hopefully, it turns to love only soon.
At a certain point.
Yeah. But what we have done as a family, I started reading my kids The Hobbit. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. And I know that's not a movie, but I like reading to the kids. It's fun to watch. We tried reading it before, and it did not work out. So I'm really enjoying sharing this piece of culture that I love deeply with them. They're enjoying it.
I really do want to read The Hobbit out loud, because I remember just how important that was.
Yeah.
When my dad read it out loud to me. I would like to. I think I just got to start reading other things out loud, which means I need to invest the time into reading out loud, which means I need to make selections and then really commit to doing it every night. dad shit.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of don't want to do it because it's really time consuming.
It's very time consuming, but it's totally worth it. And and it's fun to do because The Hobbit is really fun. And it was weird though. I had this moment, and I'm gonna share something a little personal here. So I was reading it, like my baby son was on my knee, and my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old were both there, and I was just like taken back to when my dad read The Hobbit to me, and I was probably the age of my oldest daughter. I was probably 5 years old when he read it, and I was struck with this thought, like, oh man, this is this is terrible. Like my son is just going to grow up with The Hobbit. It's not going to be this huge revelation of the whole world when he's 5 or something. We're going to come back and read it again and again, throughout the years. But then, I sort of dwelt on that for a while, and I thought, like, wow, this is actually really cool. Here's something I don't know. This is something that maybe I've just been. I don't know if struggling with is the right word, but contending with or something. Just this idea of like different things that were really important in my life, maybe occurring at different times in my kid's life, and how that's actually a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing just because it didn't happen exactly the way it happened to me.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of a cool thing to realize for me. So go me.
Yeah, that's a really cool revelation. I think it's probably really important too. I think a lot of people do try and, if they had a really good childhood, they try and do that childhood again for their kids.
Yeah,
if it was really bad, they try and do the opposite and try and fight against the tendencies. But it is hard when you have to strike out kind of in unsearched territory, and try and do something new. And it should always be applauded. So, fantastic job, dude.
Thanks.
Love that. So when are they going to watch some of Asghar Farhadi's films?
Oh, very soon. Very soon. Can't start too early.
Just starting with the separation. Just,
there we go.
Just start with the easy one,
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that's what we've been watching. For me, Ray and the Last Dragon. For Letteney, A Hero. And for Mike, he's been reading The Hobbit to his kids. So I guess before we really jump into talking about Joe, let's just talk a little bit about who this movie comes from. It's directed and produced by a fella of the name David Gordon Green, who's had one of the more bizarre careers in Hollywood. I have a note here for a question for later. It says, WTF is up with David Gordon Green. I'm just going to tackle that right now because it's really strange.
Very odd.
So this guy starts out, he does some shorts, and his first feature is a film called George Washington. Where if I can just read you the summary, a group of children in a depressed small town band together to cover up a tragic mistake one summer. The sobering little coming-of-age story, right? Then after that, he does a few smaller movies, very character-driven, All the Real Girls, Undertow, Snow Angels. And then in 2008, he directs Pineapple Express.
Pineapple Express! And a classic.
With the stoner comedy with James Franco and Seth Rogen. Follows it up with Your Highness in 2011, an R-rated comedy, and also The Sitter in 2011, another R-rated comedy. The first, Your Highness, is obviously with Danny McBride, and The Sitter with Jonah Hill. Then he takes a step back and does Prince Avalanche and Joe, both in 2013, both, again, sobering kind of dramas, before jumping ahead again to do multiple episodes of Eastbound and Down, Danny McBride's, like, downer comedy show on HBO. Does a couple other, like, direct to HBO films like Manglehorn with Al Pacino, then is just working in TV, like directing really dark comedies like Vice Principals, and then is the guy tasked with reinventing Halloween and does Halloween and Halloween Kills. While he's doing those two movies, reinventing one of our largest horror franchises, he's also again directing Danny McBride in an HBO show, The Righteous Gemstones. And now he's tasked with not only rebooting The Exorcist for a new generation, but also a Hellraiser TV show. I don't understand this guy. I have no understanding of what inspires him or what he thinks is interesting or cool. But this might be one of the only times that we ever talk about David Gordon Green, because I really don't know if we're ever going to do Pineapple Express, although maybe.
It seems like in his early career, he was interested in doing character-driven dramas. And then he liked money. I think that's what it is. I think that's what drives him.
It could be, but it's like Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals, the Danny McBride, Walton Goggins show, and The Righteous Gemstones, like, these are fairly well-to-do HBO black comedies, but they're not a wide audience.
Yeah. I have actually not seen any of them.
Eastbound and Down is funny-ish, right? Vice Principals is so uncomfortable. It's so deeply uncomfortable. It's really hard to laugh. I'm mostly just laughing at how badly I feel. I just have a really hard time with this fella. And then with Halloween Kills just being the epic fart that it is, I don't understand this guy's career at all. But he does this, in my opinion, really beautiful movie called Joe that we're here to talk about. So shout out to David Gordon Green. You have the most puzzling career I've ever seen. This is based on the novel by Larry Brown, written for us by Gary Hawkins, who, as far as I can tell, has done nothing else of note. And it stars in the three main roles. Nicolas Cage as Joe, the eponymous character, Ty Sheridan as Gary, a kid that he encounters, and Gary Poulter as Gary's dad, Wade, a.k.a. G-Dog. This is a really cool guy, Gary Poulter. I don't know if you guys know anything about this man. He was an extra in a TV show in 1987, but was found in Austin homeless on the street and was recruited to be in this film. The insurance companies were very nervous about having him because he was a very active alcoholic. And later, right after this movie premiered, he was found dead under not great circumstances on the edge of a lake. This is like a true one and done kind of performance. Like it's amazing. It's incredible. It's lived in. It's real. It feels very uncomfortably raw because in a lot of ways, I think he was really just kind of playing himself. And it's very tragic that he was never able to do anything more. But I loved him here. The movie is dedicated to his name. And then finally, rounding out our cast, we have Ronnie Jean Blevins, who I'm only mentioning because he actually showed up in Dark Knight Rises as a scarred cement truck driver.
Scarred cement truck driver. I think he was the best part of Dark Knight Rises.
You troll. Yeah, and he plays Willie Russell, the kind of coward asshole.
The main bad guy, sort of?
The one that's easiest to hate.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because Wade is hateable, but I don't know. I always felt a grain of pity. It's hard to see a man in the depths of that much addiction and blame him completely. You know?
Yeah.
So that kind of rounds out who's in this movie, who's doing it.
Sorry, just to add on to the
Gary Poulter.
Gary Poulter. Apparently, also all of the workers, the crew, were just regular day workers. They weren't actors. So it seems like there's a really cool kind of naturalistic, filmmaking approach here, where he's not looking for actors apart from the leads, and he's just employing real people to make this feel as real as possible.
And they talk like real people too, which I really love.
Yeah.
I love that. They don't nail their lines. There's a lot of like hesitation and they have to like try it again because that's how people talk. No one just rips off a banger in response to someone's insult like right away. There's a little bit of hemming and hawing and trying to make your words sound right.
And everyone's like talking over each other
constantly.
Yeah.
Kind of like we do.
I mean, so much of that seemed like it was either unscripted or ad-libbed.
I just love, one of the guys, Nick Cage is driving him back, and he's like, "Hey man, give me a cigarette." He's like, "I'm gonna start getting this out of here, pay." Or when the boy Gary wants to buy the truck, and the guy's like, "You want to buy that truck? It stinks."
No, it's all right. I like the way it smells.
Yeah. You don't. It smells so bad.
It smells like ass. Yeah. Like that truck smells like ass.
You got like 8 dudes just cramped ass to ankles in this thing after a 10-hour day chopping trees. Like. Oh man, no, thank you, Letteney. Yeah, I have a quick story I guess I want to tell about my first impressions with this. There's a couple movies that we'll be doing that I saw all in like the same period of time. There was a point late one summer. This would have been the summer of 2014 where I got injured at work, and so I was out on medical leave for about a month. I tore a ligament in my back, and so I was mostly on my back on the tile floor of our kitchen that I shared with my roommates, and people would have to like step over me, but I was laying on the tile because it was hard and it was cold and it felt good on my back. And I had nothing to do. I had nowhere to go. My roommates were all going to work during the day, so I was just alone. And I had a really good friend who would stop by after work, but we would work out like going to the Red Box and getting a bunch of DVDs. And this was one of the movies that we watched together when he'd come keep me company. And I just remember I just saw Joe. I just saw Nick Cage. It looked like a kind of a serious kind of movie. I mean, Mud with Matthew McConaughey had just come out a little bit prior. It has a very similar kind of poster. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. I bet Nick has got something here. And I remember just watching this, just knowing nothing about it with my friend and just being just blown away that there was this little independent movie that was so deep and so dark and just went for it really hard. And Nick Cage was unlike I'd ever seen him, you know? And this movie's always kind of stuck in my mind, especially the sequence when he lets the dog loose in the brothel. I always
Holy
remember
shit.
that.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the few times that Nick actually kind of like lets his own leash off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember always being moved by it. And so when we were talking about doing Maximum Cage, this was one I really wanted to try and talk about, because otherwise I don't know when I'd ever speak about this movie. And I don't know when I'd ever get someone to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But that's where I came at it from. This is only the second time I've seen it. Letteney, what did you make of this? What are your first impressions?
Yeah, I mean, you exposed me to this movie, so I saw it for the first time this week. But I was absolutely blown away by it. I think it feels really real, and I think there's a lot of depth to it. Yeah, just really powerful movie.
Yeah, this was my first time seeing it as well, and man, what a whiplash from Con Air and Moonstruck to this movie. It's so different. Nick Cage definitely like underplays in this role for the most part. This isn't the Nick Cage this isn't your daddy's Nick Cage. There's a lot of this that I like. It was really, I don't know, it was really something else to see. I think that they did a really fantastic job of creating like you said, like a realistic environment, like the workers, the people working on this crew, and the people in this town and stuff. It's real, and I appreciate it in a way. I feel like I haven't seen that very often, if ever, this well done, at least. But at the end of the day, man, I don't really like this movie. I kind of dislike this movie. I think it's not a good movie.
Interesting.
And I'm out on it. Yeah, I'm out on Joe, man. Everyone's doing a great job here, but there's something about it that feels almost manipulative in a way that I don't like. I mean, even just the fact, like, Gary Poulter is actually, like, he's an alcoholic, homeless man.
Yes.
Playing an alcoholic homeless man, and
Yeah.
he's playing himself. It feels exploitative in a way, and that's. I don't know if this movie is worth that.
It seems a strange way to. I mean, I'm not saying it's a strange accusation to level at it, but it seems a strange accusation to level at this movie, which, in my mind, does not bear any of the hallmarks of something exploitative.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's why I'm a little conflicted about it, to be honest. I'm here to be convinced that I'm wrong.
I mostly want to hear more about what you think, though. Like, so you said a couple things that I really want to dive into that. Let's just dive right into that. So you said, so number one, I'd like to ask, so does it feel exploitative in regards to Gary Poulter's character, because he was a real life alcoholic, and sort of like the making of this movie might have encouraged that?
I don't know about encouraged it, but I don't know, in a way took advantage of it or something like that. There's a bit of a conflict in that, because it's like, oh, well, so say you made this movie with someone who wasn't a real life alcoholic. Is that okay? Well, maybe there's something kind of external to the movie about the fact that, 3 months after the premiere, he was found dead.
Yeah.
From his addiction. Mm-hmm. That makes it kind of hard to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's just that. I think that movies like this, I feel like there were a bunch of them that came out around the same time. They kind of focused on just like being realistic and stuff, and sort of heightening the tension and making things worse, putting people into the worst possible situation, then making it worse. And
that's still happening.
That. Yeah.
Uncut Gems came out.
Well, yeah. But, yeah, man, that's a part of it. And I mean, maybe even the character of Joe is someone I don't really like, or maybe it's something that I want to dive into. Yeah. Is this, I don't think Joe is someone that we should really admire.
No.
And I don't know if this movie wants you to admire him, but I also don't know if it wants you not to.
Well, I think that's one of the things I really like about the movie is that we're not getting the typical boilerplate Hollywood white knight hero. That this is a very, very flawed man, and a very realistic type of person who could do a lot of good and help people, but has their own demons.
Yeah.
So I guess I agree with you, but that's what I like about it.
Well, okay. Let's ask another. So I guess I would say, in talking about exploitation here, we just talked about The Dark Knight, where one of the stars of that movie did die according to his demons. Now, I don't think that Gary Poulter killed himself, but I think he did die from his issues. Same with Heath Ledger. That was ruled not a suicide. It was ruled just a lethal mixture, a cocktail of prescribed drugs, right? I don't think that retroactively makes The Dark Knight hard to watch, knowing that he's dead. And I also don't think that movie is exploitative because of what he was going through to do that performance. These are people with free will. I understand that addiction can corrupt that in some way, but these are consenting adults who are agreeing to do these roles.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not like when we were talking about, for example, The Godfather way back when the 16-year-old girl, that's exploitation. That should be called out. I don't think that's here. It's at least not in any way similar to a lot of other circumstances that you could call that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I disagree with you. I think that the fact that Heath Ledger died during the filming of The Dark Knight because of the issues that he was dealing with, because of filming The Dark Knight, does make it hard to watch. I don't think that necessarily disrupts the value of the art or of the film in front of us, but it's something to contend with. For me, at least, it is.
I feel like it's fairly okay. I don't want to speak for you then.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, I don't know. It's a movie, right?
Yeah.
This is artificial, and so I can stop remembering that this is an actor, especially if the movie is good, or at least well made. Which I definitely felt with Dark Knight, obviously, but I also feel with Joe. I was not constantly reminded that this actor was dead. I was just invested in Wade.
It's not so much to me that like he's dead. It's the fact that this guy is just living. This is, I imagine, some version of his life, and that's and he said that he'd do it. He was fine with it, which is like that's fine. But I don't know. I feel like I have to contend with that when I'm watching it. And I didn't know he was dead when I was watching it. I mean, it's I don't know. It's tough. Like, it is very tough to see that character. These are hard characters to watch, and I think that that's not bad to have a movie with hard characters to watch. Maybe it comes down to I don't know if it's real.
Is it like a risk-reward scenario, or are you saying like... Or are you saying how much of this is like a documentary?
No. It's actually not that. It's just like that. Those are sort of additional on top of it. It's that I don't know if it's all of these things are worth it for this, because I kind of feel like this movie is primarily manipulative to make you feel these emotions rather than an actual story. Something that I really believe exists.
I did not feel manipulated, I do have to say. I actually felt like this movie worked very against what you could call manipulation. Like, I would call something like Warhorse manipulative, that
hey, I
really
cried.
Clear. Yeah, it wanted you to cry, you sheeple.
I went with my mom, who was beautiful.
Yeah, I went with my mom too. All right, and I laughed at her.
Favorite movie.
My mom is crying, and I'm like, he's fine. It's a CGI horse.
It wasn't a horse. He was a friend horse.
It wasn't even a horse. It was a collection of pixels. But that seems like a very clear case of manipulation. And in this one, I don't think that a very compelling argument, at least to my mind, can be made for this movie's manipulation, because I think the worst thing you can say about this movie is that with the exception of the final ending where you see Gary with the truck and replanting the trees that Nick Cage had poisoned, right?
Right.
With the exception of that, I think the ending is very difficult to read and parse and feel. The movie does not try overly hard to make you feel anything. It presents things, in my point of view. How does that sound to you, Letteney? Where do you fall in this?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I have you guys seen the movie that kept springing to mind while I was watching this was The Devil All the Time.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So that's yeah, so I think it came out maybe in 2020. It's a
Yeah.
southern, it's like a southern gothic kind of like this where but it stars I think Tom Holland.
Yep.
But anyways, that movie seemed very manipulative to me.
Oh,
where all of the characters seemed unrealistic and the events were crazy dark and crazy horrific in a way that was just meant to make you feel. Whereas this seems like these are real people. So it seems like, I mean, I guess, you know, you could sort of, the positive side, the negative side of moving is manipulative, right? So it seems like you could sort of ascribe those words to the same thing, sort of based on your perspective. But it seems like insofar as movies are about telling stories to give some insight into life, if you're taking realistic characters and putting through what feels like realistic scenarios, that feels to me closer to what storytelling should be. And thus, it doesn't seem manipulative to me in this case, I guess.
I agree with that, like being storytelling, but I guess I feel like I don't think Joe's internal struggle is really believable, and I don't, and I mean, like, you know, I don't know, I could be wrong, but it seemed like the situation that Ty Sheridan finds himself in is also fairly unbelievable. Now that is, now that I say that, I'm wondering about how much I know about the world, and whether that's true, you know. But those are the things that where I'm feeling that, in the first place, this is kind of an unbelievable situation. I feel like this kid and his sister and his they've broken up by this point. He's pretty old, you know, and he is a much more capable person than his father is. I just don't, man, maybe it's just, I just don't care about Joe. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the reason why I'm out. I just feel like his internal crisis there's not much there.
I think this actually ties into a question that I'd like to ask about the movie, what the role of addiction plays.
Yeah.
Because this movie is very much about addiction and very much about how that can kind of take a man over. There's a really good scene where right before, well, I don't actually remember right before when it is, but there's a great scene when Ty Sheridan as Gary is talking to his mother, and she is, you know, saying that he's his father, you know, this abusive alcoholic asshole. You know, it has his moments, you know, these moments where she's at least saying like he's a human being, and we don't really see those moments. I mean, the movie literally opens. It's actually my favorite scene. The movie opens with this long one shot of Wade smoking a cigarette while his son dresses him down and is talking and trying to, like, you know, provide some solutions. Like, we can't keep doing this. Like, you're going to get your ass kicked. Like, you're a bad dude. And then he just gets the shit whomped out of him. Yeah. And then his dad walks up the mountain, walks up this hill, and then gets the shit kicked out of him. And then it's Gary sort of looking over his shoulder, walking down the railroad tracks, watching this happen to his father. And there's even a scene where Gary beats up this guy who makes a terrible comment about his sister. He's more than capable of freeing himself from the shadow of his father, but he's scared. He's really, really frightened, because the thing about dads, especially really terrible dads, who have addictions like this, is that there's this innate thing that happens in the child where they feel like they can never overcome the father. The father is this looming shadow, even though he's a pathetic figure. Even though they know they can literally, actually physically best him, the power that he holds over their spirit is so great, they can't actually do it themselves. They need someone else to step in. It's incredibly common. It's incredibly common. So I think it's actually very believable, because I've seen it so often, not only in my own life, but in other people's lives around me, this relationship between Gary and his father. And for someone like Joe, on the outside looking in, you know, you don't know where Joe has come from. You know, maybe he's had a past, maybe he has a dad like this. maybe he found a way out. Maybe Joe had a Joe that helped him out. And he's trying to help Gary in that way break out of that destructive cycle and find something new. And I love, that's what I love principally about this movie. I think this movie does fall apart in its final act, the final 15 minutes, I think. But everything about the three-way relationship there where Gary has these two choices about the man that he can be, a loser alcoholic like his dad, or, a man who's doing something but is tormented by demons like Joe, this pathological distrust of authority. And he doesn't really want to do either one. He doesn't have Joe's hangups, and he doesn't have his father's, whatever his father has that made him do this, right? He's trying to make his own way, and he needs Joe's help to find out what that is. And so the ultimate happy ending of him being his own man and, sort of free and clear, fresh-eyed and clear-eyed and fresh-faced, going to the new job site is incredibly hopeful for me, and it's very inspiring for me to see. I actually believed all of the relationships because I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen a Joe, I've seen a Wade, I've seen a Gary. That's what I loved about it. I don't know if that convinces you of anything, but I do think it's realistic simply because I've seen it.
Yeah.
But you had another thing you said, Mike,
yeah,
that I was interested in. You said that you didn't think it was a very good movie. And I'd like to get into that too.
Well, I guess more of the story is where the issue with the movie is. Also, the sound balance seemed off to me, but that could just be the balance of sound seemed off to me. Like the music, I didn't vibe with the music. Maybe I was just in a pissy mood when I watched this movie. I was like, I'm not gonna like this movie.
The worst thing I can say about the music in Joe is I don't remember the music of Joe.
Yeah, it's not really memorable.
Yeah, same here.
It's constant. It's like this constant
That also is kind of indie drama, though.
It is. It's super indie drama from the early 2010s.
It does sound like you were a little bent against this movie. I am going to say that.
Yeah.
I want to treat everything you're saying with absolute just and fairness, but at a certain point, I don't know. It seems like you have an axe to grind here.
Yeah, it's just this vector of all the worst possible things that could possibly happen to a person occur within 3 people or 4 people interacting. The worst things it just so happened that the guy that Joe beat up at the bar when he got drunk one night is also this horrible sex crazed human who it's just,
I don't know. I guess I didn't read it as coincidence because it seems like
fated.
Gary has been living this life, right?
yeah.
And there's that scene where Joe is hanging out with Gary on Gary's porch, and the sister comes to the door, and then Gary tells Joe that his sister just stopped talking.
Yeah.
So it seems pretty clear that the sister had some sexual abuse. So it doesn't seem like all these events collided in one moment. It seems like this has been happening for years and years and years, and finally there's a Joe to help.
Yeah. Yeah, because they talk about how they've been kind of transient. And that's the thing about the Southern Gothic genre, though, is that it's about cyclic depravity in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And breaking the cycle.
Yeah, or not.
Or not.
Right?
Yeah.
And this one, it just so happened that there was, and that, as is, I think, right and just and meet for a Southern Gothic hero, he also pays the ultimate price for his heroism, right? And in that way, it seems very classical, and it seems very, not normal, but I guess it doesn't jump out to me as something that bothered me as being coincidental. It seemed like right for the genre.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I was thinking is that this seems like a very small town, very economically depressed. So it does seem like the kind of place where no one ever really leaves, and everyone knows each other, and there's just these long-standing feuds. It seems like Joe and whatever his name is have been feuding for years. Yeah, they're just constantly going back and forth and beating each other up, and it's coming to a head for sure, but it doesn't seem coincidental to me, I guess, because it seems like it's capturing a certain kind of place.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, maybe I'm just being pissy. But I mean, dude, okay, even then, I'm not out on the end. I actually kind of dug it. on one hand, but on the other
by
hand,
the end,
like
what do you mean?
like the final confrontation,
Oh, okay.
and the him getting the job. I dug that as well.
I love
I thought
that.
that was
I
beautiful.
love that. I just
and like I'd be interested. I want to move forward into talking about stuff that I did like, because there is a lot that I do like about this movie. But even there, we get in this hyper realistic type movie, we get like the payoff of seeing Joe blow. Spoilers for Joe. Blow the bad guy's brains out, and like it wraps up kind of nicely in a way that isn't really realistic.
I first of all, I disagree in saying that it's hyper real. It doesn't seem hyper real. It feels bleak and dreamy in a lot of ways, because there's many details that are just completely ignored. Like, we sort of, for most of this movie, you sort of drift between scenes, and sometimes the violence is like really shocking and very out of nowhere. It doesn't seem to me to be like a gritty, Safdie-esque thriller like we're talking about Uncut Gems,
Right,
or Good Time, which I would say
Right.
those are hyper realistic. This feels very rural, very kind of agrarian. This feels like an old tale almost.
Yeah, I think the characters in the setting feel really real, but I do think that the story and the way it's told does feel very dreamlike. Like, one thing I was struck by is there's that scene where Joe has just helped them show them how to cut the deer, and then he walks outside, and then he gets shot, right?
Yeah.
And then it takes like it takes like 3 scenes for the movie to tell us why he got shot.
Yeah.
We have no idea why it happened, you know? Like, it seems like a more straightforward movie would immediately tell you why that happened.
He
But-
laid out after the guy. Like there
Yeah.
would be a chase scene immediately. And instead, we switch point of views to go with Willie. Then we switch point of views again to go with Gary. Then Gary meets Willie at the bridge. Then Gary beats Willie up after Willie gets rid of the gun. Then Gary leaves with his dad. Like, it's a strange moving movie where the parts don't work in clockwork with each other. We sort of like drift from scenes to scenes, following whichever character we just sort of almost randomly choose to follow, which I think is a problem with the movie, that it's not more focused. My biggest issue, though, with the ending is actually that it does tie up very neatly. It has to tie up. It must tie up. The genre calls for the eventuality of an ending, right?
Yeah.
Everyone must meet their ends.
Yeah.
I have no problem with Nick Cage doing it with the bad guy. That guy's been asking for it the whole movie, okay?
Yeah.
But my problem was with Wade's death, which is why
Ooh,
a question I
interesting.
had about, does the role of Wade make sense? Okay, so movie opens. This is how I want to phrase the question. Movie opens. Wade beats up son, gets beat up by Willie, right? Then he kind of drifts along. We get
Wait,
a
that's
little...
Willie that beats him up?
I think so.
It is?
I think so.
Did you see that?
I just assumed it was some random people, but
Yeah, I thought that was like the previous town.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't get the sense that they were moving. Either way, it doesn't matter. He gets beat up.
Yeah.
Then he kind of drifts along for a while. Then we see him again, where he beats another homeless man to death with a piece of metal for half a bottle of wine.
A really cheap looking pink wine.
Really cheap looking pink wine.
I've drunk that wine, man.
Yeah, but then
bad wine.
then we have him like right in the scene where he's drinking the vodka with his son, and he witnesses his son beat the guy up. Then he's threatening his son, wanting the money with the knife, right? He towers over him, physically demeans him. And then at the very end, he asks Joe, "Are you my friend?" And then kills himself.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this character because for as much as the performance I think is really good, and many parts of this make sense for the story, I don't see a logical or clear reason for many of the things this character does. And just saying, "Oh, he's an alcoholic," does not do enough to explain that to me. Specifically, I don't understand why he kills himself. I don't get it. He's lived with this self-loathing all this time. I don't really understand why his circumstances are so different now. Is it just because he doesn't have Gary to beat up on anymore? Because he's still got the daughter? Or does he not have access to the daughter? Is that not good enough for him? He just needs to crush Gary? Like, what's the motivation here?
I feel like he sort of took on a role of being the avatar of alcoholism and the specter of Joe's future. which is destroyed, which is unquenchable and undefeatable. Also, the specter of Gary's future as well, which is only able to be defeated when Joe himself sacrifices himself for Gary, like has that sort of moment, which that's not a character. That's a
plot
avatar.
device.
That's a plot device. Which I feel like that's a very good way of expressing maybe one of my key badly expressed problems as well.
I just feel that maybe it would have been more impactful had his death been at the hands of Willie. The one that we have seen been dominated by both Joe and Gary. To be brought low by that guy would have been, I think, very dramatically fitting.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird decision to have, are you my friend? Smile. Alley-oop! He yeets himself out of the picture.
Well, there's a sense that, like, this is actually, I don't know. I was left wondering whether this was the first time he'd actually done this, where he pimped out his daughter.
Yeah, that's what Letteney was saying, right?
But no, you were saying that it seemed like sexual abuse had occurred before, right?
Yeah.
Those are not mutually exclusive.
I guess that's true.
I'm not sure if it was him or, who knows, but.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of self-loathing in this character. I guess it would make sense eventually he would kill himself, but I didn't believe the why. So I love everything around that scene, and I love the things that happen before and after it. But just in that scene, I feel like you had to get to the end of the movie, and you had to tie it up, and this is how you tied it up. And there should have been more. The great Southern Gothic writers give you more, or they give you much less. Maybe even much less would have been better. Like, if we don't see this confrontation, we just see the aftermath because we're taking Gary's point of view finally because our other main characters are gone. That would make a lot of sense to me as well. Like, we've taken Gary's point of view, we've taken Joe's point of view, we've taken Willie's point of view, and we've taken Wade's point of view at different times in the story. So it makes sense if we condense all of them back to Gary. He's the protagonist, and he comes upon the scene after it's over. And his future and his fears and all the threats all fight without him being present, and then he's left with the conclusion, and he can make his own choices. That would have made a lot of narrative sense to me, and I'm a little bit miffed we didn't get that. What do you think, Letteney?
I'm not sure. I agree that the suicide is inscrutable, and maybe it is just trying to wrap everything up in a nice bow. But I do think there's more to. He'd want to say Gary, but it's not Gary. Wade. I think there's more to Wade than just as a plot device. Like I think there's something really interesting about the picture of someone who's living in hypocrisy, right? Like there's that scene where he murders the homeless guy. He beats him to death horrifically with a wrench. And it seems like unnecessarily. It seems like he could have once taken the bottle. But he does this savage, brutal thing. And then in the next minute, he puts his hand on the guy's head. It seems like he's praying. And then he kisses the guy's forehead.
Yeah.
So it seems like, to me, this seems like a realistic portrait of someone who is so completely consumed by their addiction that they're living constantly in hypocrisy, that they are doing horrific things and then either forgetting about them or denying them. His abuse to his children and his wife. There's that scene you didn't mention.
Is the bit in Arrested Development when Will Arnett gets caught in the roofie circle?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, it just flashed into my head. I wanted to share it.
No, that's a great scene. There was one scene I wanted to point out that I don't think you mentioned in the history of Wade was there's that scene. Well, it's right before they have the confrontation on the bridge where he and Gary are just sitting outside and Gary's trying to get him to go, let's go get some food, and he's way too drunk. And then he starts trying to teach his son how to break dance. And it seems like that's, obviously he's like wildly drunk and way out of his mind, but it does seem like that's kind of the one moment in the movie where you get a little humanity and maybe a glimpse of like there might be some good times in this family life. Obviously, it's like 90% trash, but there might be enough good moments that is sort of taping this family together.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I'm fascinated by that idea of someone who lives in that hypocrisy, who can do horrific things and just be in denial. And I don't know, I think that seemed realistic to me, I guess.
I agree with that. Yeah, that is a really good note. I like that a lot too. Yeah, I was really taken by Mr. Poulter's performance. That's for sure.
I was too. Yeah,
Never seen
yeah,
that
that was
before.
a beautiful scene. Weirdly beautiful.
All right, so we've gone a little far afield, but let's
Yeah.
bring it back here. Mike, what's a scene you did like?
The scene I did like a lot about this movie. I did.
I don't believe.
I'm like upset at it. I'm kind of angry at it because I felt like it wanted me to feel things, and I don't want something to want me to feel things. I just want to feel them.
We heard you.
All right.
We heard you.
But so places where I felt really good about this.
We disagree, but we
Yeah,
heard you.
I really loved. I thought Gary's arc was really beautiful and enjoyable to be around. In a weird way at some points, in a normal way in others. When he first makes his way onto the job site and gets a job working for Joe, killing trees, that scene was just rad. Like that was fantastic. The music was a little much for me.
I still cannot
It
recall
was so
one note.
vibey. Super vibey.
There's nothing in my cerebral cortex that took in or thought to remember the soundtrack in any way.
I felt that way, and then I watched like that scene again. I was like, yeah, this soundtrack is just like a little too vibey.
When I look at the poster of Joe, I hear a distant twangy banjo, and that is all in my head.
I don't know, but whatever. Like, so he's going around, and like the guys are just showing him how to do shit, and it's like, man, I don't know. I've been on job sites, I've been on crews, been the new guy, been the old guy, whatever, and it's felt a lot like this.
Yeah. And you know what it even felt like is that these were nice people. They were being really nice to
They
him.
seem like nice guys, but like people. Like this feeling of being respected by your elders because you're a hard worker.
Yeah.
Like I remember getting that feeling when I was 15 years old, just like him. And it was really cool. But also like, they're like, hey, I make it look easy. That's because I'm a big man. You're a little guy. So you
They kept calling
you got a lot of shit to figure out.
What are you doing there, little boy?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
It was great. Like, but that's a part of them bringing him into like their society is like part of this is this sort of
good-natured hazing.
Yeah, good-natured hazing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Watching his relationship develop with Joe was really interesting, familiar. Like, there's things about this that are familiar and a lot of things that are not. And that was... I really enjoyed that. The cinematography, like the naturalist sort of...
Just following guys at the camera.
Yeah, following guys at the camera, and even just like... It's the colors are beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
I guess that sort of adds to the dreamlike quality as well that you guys were referencing.
It's so vibrant. It looks so much better than our lives do.
Yeah.
Or it looks so much worse.
Yeah. Or it looks so much worse. Yeah. Really love that.
That's a really good scene.
Mm-hmm.
I love so much about that. I love when he brings Wade to the job because I'm cringing inside.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I love when he's like walking around because he's a dry drunk now. He's walking around for water. He is parched. And he's drinking everyone's water, and everyone's like, "What the fuck? Stop drinking my water,
That's
dude!
my water."
Yeah, that's such a great sequence because it's like an unbroken shot, and he's stepping onto the job site. He grabs one guy's water, drinks it, walks like 10 feet, and grabs another guy's water, drinks it.
So
it's like
he's dying, He either needs to get drunk again and lay down, or we are about to get some really bad DTs.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, and even like when Gary's like sitting with the guys and joking around at break time, and he looks over at his dad, and his dad's sitting there alone. You feel the cringe.
Yeah,
you feel that pain.
Yeah, this guy's not going to last long here.
Yeah, and just the pain that Gary's got to be feeling of like, here's his dad. Like he wants him to be his dad.
Yep.
And he is not.
Deep embarrassment.
He is the most embarrassing person that you can imagine.
It's a great scene. Great collection of scenes. I love watching them work.
Yeah. And just like sit in the back of the truck. Yeah, that's so fun. That's so much fun.
It looked wet. It looked wet when it was raining. Holy shit, it looked wet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, Letteney, what's your favorite?
So if you guys don't mind, I want to read a quote from one scene, but tied to another scene.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So the quote is from kind of in the middle of the movie when Joe is in bed, or maybe just in his house with that girl that he's kind of protecting.
Yeah.
And so here's what he says. He says, "I don't know who I am, but I know what keeps me alive is restraint. It keeps me out of jail, keeps me from hurting people. The mark of some fucked up faith that there was reason, a reason for all of this, a reason in most moments that I shouldn't do what I want to do. I do as I'm told. These men who bust their asses work like dogs, and I believe in them, but every day they hurt. They get old, they peel back. There's no frontier anymore. And I watch that boy, and I see someone who's nothing like me, but he's a child folks left behind with no defense. Balanced right there." So I kind of feel like that's kind of the thesis of the movie. That's the heart of who Joe is. And I guess my favorite scene is the scene where Gary comes to Joe after he's been beaten up and his sister's been taken. And there's that moment where he says, "I can beat him up." And Joe hugs him and he says, "I know you can. I know you can, but you don't have to do that." And it seems like what's unspoken there is that Joe has done this. Joe has gone out and committed violence before. Maybe this was how he became who he was. And he sees this child balanced right there, right? And in that moment, he takes that sacrificial role and he takes the bullet for the kid and he does what he probably did, but he doesn't want this child to do, to go down the path that he went down. Maybe that's not really a scene, but I don't know. I guess that's the moment that really spoke to me.
Yeah, it's an amazing. I mean, the character sort of lays out what he's about and then kind of fulfills it later. That's really cool. I had not tied those two together. I love the contents of that little middle bit, right, when he's talking, and I love the way it's shot. In the dark, he's shirtless, and kind of manically smoking. I love the ideas behind it. I don't like how that's written. It smacks very much of I'm 25 years old and I'm writing this, but that doesn't take away from, I think, the purity of the intention of those lines, especially when he says these men, they hurt, right? That's a very, I don't know. It seems a little immature, a little half baked. And like you could, if with one more pass, you could maybe make that into like an all-time monologue about kind of the nature of work and the way it brings men down and wears them out. But even as it stands, I think it is a really beautiful explication of Joe's worldview and his ideas towards Gary and towards Wade. It is really beautiful in that way. Yeah. Good call, Lenny. Nice tying that together. I had not done that.
I caught that on the second rewatch today. So.
Oh, you've seen it twice. Wow, good for you.
Well, the second rewatch was just on in the background while I was working. So.
Oh yeah. As we do.
So I'm remembering. So my TV's doing this thing. I don't know how to fix it. I've tried everything I can, but so it gets lighter and darker. It's adaptive. Like
Ew.
The screen adapts to the lightness.
That's bad.
It's really bad. It's really not. I've got adaptive brightness turned off. And so in that scene, I was completely unable to pay attention to what was going on because I was like, what the hell is going on with my damn TV? Yeah. It's like going between light and dark and shit. Like it was extremely annoying. I don't know what to do. It's so annoying. It's turned off on the TV. It's turned off on the whatever.
Whatever. I'm really okay. So
movies suck. I hate movies.
This is really unveiling something else that you're dealing with, like really shitty technology.
I guess that's true.
So that would definitely
I need
ruin
to live
your
up
viewing of
to
something.
my own like commitment to having good technology.
You
That's
kind
what
of
it
do.
is.
Your TV is little and dinky.
It is little and dinky. I should get a bigger TV.
I think you should get a bigger
I think
TV.
I need a bigger TV. I wonder if anyone will help me.
I can get you a 55-inch for freezies.
I need a Joe in my life to get me a new TV.
I'll Joe you.
All right. Awesome.
I don't want to say
no,
that
but okay. I want to ask about that line. Like there's no frontier anymore. Do you feel like this movie deserves to have that line? That's like a big line, man. And like, I don't feel like this movie deserves that line.
I feel like you've shown your extreme prejudice. That's what I'm going to say. I think that this movie is pretending to greater ground than it should have. But you know what? Every time any of us make anything, that's what we're doing anyways.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
So good for this movie for having some balls, and good for David Gordon Green for literally manifesting his own career in front of his eyes by just trying his best. And is this the best script? No. No, it's not. Is this the best movie? No, it's not. But I think it's a really strong amateur work that's elevated by some very strong, and honestly, now we're seeing like Ty Sheridan is quite the professional actor, even if I think he's bad in most things that are not this. But Nick Cage has given his best to this little movie too. Like, he shouldn't have to do this. Is a $4 million movie and it flopped.
Yeah.
$2.5 million, it flopped. Yeah. This little movie. But that's what Nick Cage does. He reads something that moves him and strikes him, and then he just does his best with it. I like the line. That's a good line. I don't know. Just because Cormac McCarthy uses it doesn't mean that Larry Hawkins can't use it. Larry Brown, that's his name.
Well, okay, no, but to further my thought there, like, this sounds like what I would say if I was trying to explain why I was upset. It's like kind of a bunch of half-baked thoughts that like connect to things in my own mind.
Yeah.
And so this is actually me kind of turning a little bit of a corner on this movie, where it's like I kind of, maybe if it wasn't Nicolas Cage's voice reading it, it wouldn't carry the profundity or something that it's trying to, or I don't know. I'm trying to say is that I like it a little bit more, thinking about it a little bit more, is where I'm trying to get with this.
I mean, look, that's the most we can ask.
All right.
That's the most we can ask.
All right.
Just give it a fair shake. Like,
Yeah.
If you don't like it, great, don't like it. But don't like it for real sound reasons.
Yeah.
Not just because you were pissy.
Yeah.
You know, I hate many things just because I was pissy, and I wish I didn't. And I like it when I can point to something, like I did with Ray in The Last Dragon, and be like, that is what sucks. That's why I hate it. Because once you do that, once everyone's clear on what everyone believes, that's where you have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. Glad you could share. Yeah. We're glad that we could go, what? No,
What, you asshole?
Such a jerk. I knew I was going to lose you on one of these, and I'm glad it was the last one.
You know, maybe it's just because I was like, I've seen the picture for this movie, and I thought that this was about like kind of a I don't know why. I thought this movie was about kind of a fun-loving, like hard drinking, like chainsaw guy. Like he was chopping down trees. It's gonna be about lumberjacks doing like rough and rowdy lumberjack things. I don't really know what that means. But
Were
that's
you high?
like,
When you saw this?
This is just a stone cold bummer.
Yeah.
Like, this is a bummer of a movie.
Yes, it is.
And I was bummed out like already from a long day, and then this was even more of a bummer.
Now, okay, I wanted to talk about where this movie sits. Okay, so Nick Cage, in these three movies, we have Nick Cage as a wild, wooden hand having crazy bread guy, all right? We have Nick Cage as ex-Army Ranger, convict, trying to get back to his family. Hell yeah, America. And then we have him as Joe here, completely disillusioned with the system, distrust of all and any authority. He fistfights several cops in the movie, and is just trying to make his way in this hard scrabble world. This is in a lot of ways very typical Nick Cage kinds of performances. Like, this doesn't quite mark a turning point, but it's pretty close for the sort of roles that he goes after this. I mean, actually, probably the presage of this is Bad Lieutenant Port of Call, New Orleans.
Is it,
yeah,
Vito?
It is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna have to take my.
If you say so,
yeah,
I will take your word on that.
But then after this, he does like other stuff. Like Mandy is very much like a successor to Joe. That is where the alcoholism gets like crazier, and where the internal struggle gets like nuts, really, really nuts. But this, I wanted to talk where we find Nick Cage, because we've done this with each of the other ones. So after Con Air, he has this really crazy 4-4, right? Leaving Las Vegas, gets the Oscar nom, or the win, actually.
Yeah, Oscar win.
Then we got The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. Now it's 1998. He can do almost anything he wants. And he does. He works with everyone from Brian De Palma with Snake Eyes to Scorsese for Bringing Out the Dead. He's in movies for John Woo, like Wind Talkers. He's doing adaptation for Charlie Kaufman. He is working really hard.
He's doing Lord of War.
Lord of War. It rules.
It does rule.
Andrew
It's
Niccol.
a great movie.
But he's just working with people that are really interesting and really fun and also is doing movies that make money, like Next. But so unlike McConaughey, where there's this sort of the McConaissance, right, that begins with Mud and True Detective, it sort of redeems him from being just romantic comedy trash into being a respected actor again. People like to put that on Nick Cage. I don't think that's the case. He's always been in weird direct-to-DVD movies, and he's also always been in really strong Oscar contenders, and he's also always been in really populist movies. That doesn't change. There just happens to now be more of them. There's more of all of them. Like in 2019, here are the movies he does in 2019. A Score to Settle, Color Out of Space, which is actually really good. Running with the Devil, Kill Chain, Primal, Grand Isle. He stars in all of those. Those are all direct to DVD, with the exception of Color Out of Space. And that's insane. That's a crazy thing for a crazy person to do. But it's not as if he's not still a star, because the year prior, he's in both Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Like big movies for kids. He never stops being this draw, and I kind of just wanted to reclaim that for people. If you want to look down his filmography, yeah, does he have a year or two where he only does direct-to-DVD? Sure. But he always comes back. You can never keep Nick Cage down. He exists outside of your judgment. He does what he wants. And if you take anything away from our Maximum Cage, you know that Nick marches to the beat of his own drum and always will. And that's, I think, the thing I like the most about it. I mean, he is playing himself this year in the unbearable weight of massive talent. Is that a new release? That's got to be a new release.
I think our next Maximum Cage might have to be around a new release.
Now, I don't want to like make this a precedent though, because there are just too many new releases.
I was just saying it's gonna have to be around some new release that he does. We'll do a Maximum Cage episode. When and where that will be and what, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Who may know?
All right. That is what I have for you all. Is there anything extra that you wanted to bring up, Letteney, that you thought was interesting or fun? Or you had a question about or a problem with?
No, I think we've talked about everything I was thinking about. I think Mike, you've convinced me a little bit about. I think I agree with you about the problematic nature of this movie in terms of Gary Poulter. What's his name?
Yeah,
the homeless guy, Gary Poulter. Yeah, because it does seem like there is a big difference in my mind between Heath Ledger and Gary Poulter, where. I don't. We don't need to rehash all this again, but I guess I was just thinking that with Heath Ledger, it's method acting, right? He's choosing to do this, and it seems like this is something very different, where he's not method acting. It's the director taking someone who is in the throes of an addiction and using that for the screen, which does make me uncomfortable. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but I see the moral quandary here.
I guess it just comes down to then, because that is not unique to this movie at all, nor is it unique to, nor is it actually unique, really, in the name of cinema and Hollywood. I guess it then comes down to like, how much do you want your art to imitate life, and how close an imitation does it need to be, right? Which is always a line that many creative people have flirted with, right? How much do we need to pretend for this to be a movie and not to be a documentary? And I think it's a complex question that people have fought over and probably will always continue to fight over, because I don't think that there's a clear answer at this stage. But I'd like to get into that a different time. But
agreed.
I don't know when that would be. I'd love to do it now. I just feel ill-prepared to do it now.
Yeah. I think it's something we've talked about before and we'll talk about again. It's something I think anyone who's trying to understand artistic work is contending with all the time. It's like, like in 60 Songs That Explain the 90s.
Rob Harvilla.
He talks through some very problematic and complicated people who changed the face of music. And like, this is true. It's a complicated world, art, seems like.
So, Letty, I do have one last question for you. How does it feel to be on the least downloaded episodes of Not Your Father's Movies? Because this is going to be one of them. Ain't no one seen this thing, and ain't no one watching it just to hear our episode either.
I was starting to hear Mike say, "This is a bummer." Like, nope.
But just in case you have listened to this, and for some reason you didn't nope out of here, this movie, as of this recording and this release, is streaming on HBO Max. Please please check it out. Please try it. You know.
Yeah, and I think it only made like $300,000 in theaters. So I think this is a movie that no one knows about. It was completely missed. It was completely forgotten. So yeah, go check it out. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I also do. I think this is going to be, in my mind, this is a hidden gem. This is like a little indie movie that you can pull out of your pocket and be like, come on, look at this thing. Also, it did make 2.4 million but it didn't make back its budget. Letteney.
Oh, okay.
But still, like 2 million in 2013. That means you're right. Like their families went to see this.
Yeah.
All right. So I do have to ask a question. I feel like I know the answer. Maybe I'll be surprised. Is this a dad movie? For me, no. Very clearly, it's not. I enjoyed revisiting this. I enjoy thinking about these ideas, and I enjoy the way this movie presents them. I think they're done better elsewhere. But the unique voice that it's presented in this movie, I think I want to keep to myself and maybe a few friends. But it's not something I'm going to show my children. And it's not something that I will be revisiting maybe ever. Yeah, maybe ever. I don't think so. What do you think, Mike?
Same here. Definitely not a dad movie for me. And I'm not going to show it to my kids. I don't know if I'll ever revisit it. There's stuff here that I'm gonna remember, and sort of hold, like some of the like Ty Sheridan coming out of the crew and stuff like that stuff really resonated and reminded me of my own, teenage years a bit. But no, it's not a dad movie. Not going to show it to my kids.
I think it does stick with you though, because I saw this 8 years ago and I remembered it long enough to want to discuss it with people. And I think this is one of those movies that does kind of, it lingers and it makes you kind of go back over it and over it. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, sorry, Letteney.
What about you, Letteney?
Well, I guess this gets back to what's a dad movie. Because I think this is a movie about fatherhood.
It is.
But it's not a movie that I necessarily want to show my kids. I do think this is a movie I will return to. Probably not for a long time, but I think Nick Cage is great in this. I think Ty Sheridan is the real breakout here. I think he's really amazing in this. And that's a performance I'd like to go back and look at again down the road.
Every single time I see him be shitty in another movie, I want to come back to this one and remember that there was a time when he was really good. I'm sorry, that's unnecessary shade, but there is times where I see him in things like The Card Counter or Ready Player One where I'm like, get the fuck out of here. What are you doing?
Yeah, there's that moment where Joe has just agreed to sell him the car, and he has this smile on his face that is so pure and felt so real and relatable. It's just magic.
It's the face I see every single time I say, "Hey, Letteney, you want to be on the pod?"
Was there anything else you want to talk about with like the fatherhood aspect of this movie? I feel like we haven't really talked about it, but I don't really know what I have to say. It's kind of just here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just that it's about a guy who was a terrible father and a father figure coming in and being a true father figure, I guess. Well, maybe not being a great father figure. I mean, he does give him beer and let him drive drunk, but it seems.
I mean, that sounds like a great dad, man. Hell yeah.
He's not. Don't call him sir. I'm your friend. We're friends now.
Yeah.
I'm 40, you're 15.
I'm 40, you're 15. I am already drunk. I wish you to be drunk with me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's even less of a father movie and more of almost an older brother movie.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want his little brother to fall into the same pitfalls as himself. And, he'll take his brother out and get him drunk and talk about girls, but he's looking out for his little brother, I guess.
Yeah. At least it doesn't do weird stuff like try and set him up with a prostitute. I was really happy that was
Yeah.
not a scene.
Yeah, that
That's
could have been
really-
a scene in this movie.
And that would have been like good old boy, old fashioned America. And I was like, oh nope, nope. Thank you.
Man, that brothel. Ooh.
Yeah, that was rough.
Oh,
That was some
that
rough
was-
stuff. Don't be on a first name basis is my advice.
Today's a special day. I want you.
Oh, he never wants me. I have to cut that out, aren't I? All right. Well, for all of us at Not Your Father's Movies, we are closing out Maximum Cage. And we are going to be coming at you with a little fun thing here. We're going to be doing a little Jesse birthday episode at some point around here. And we're also going to be unveiling a little new series for you. So stick around for that. I can't tell you what it is yet. But when we nail down some particulars, we will let you know. But for all of us at Not Your Father's Movies, I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Letteney.
See you later.